Welcome to the Hindu Daily. We're diving straight into 5 critical streams of information today, covering everything from deep constitutional law and global strategy right through to our environment and workplace safety. Our mission, as always, is to navigate these sources and really pull out the core knowledge you need quickly and thoroughly.
It's quite a mix today, definitely. Some challenging stuff. We're starting where state power meets individual liberty, a tricky area defined by some legal ideas that, well, many people might not even know exist.
Right, let's unpack this first piece. It uses a pretty striking image, calling preventive detention, that's Articles 22 through to 7, the Bermuda Triangle of Indian law. The idea being that fundamental rights like liberty, due process, they just seem to vanish there, based purely on suspicion.
It's an extraordinary power, no doubt. And what's key recently is the judiciary trying to draw some lines. The Supreme Court ruling in Danya M. versus State of Kerala just last year, 2025, really stressed this isn't, a routine tool. It has to be used sparingly.
Sparingly, okay.
And crucially, the court hammered home that vital distinction. Preventative detention. It's only for threats to public order, not your standard law and order problem.
Okay, that distinction comes up all the time in these discussions. For listeners, can you just quickly break that down? Public order versus law and order, what's the real difference on the ground?
Sure. Think about scale and impact, right? A fight between neighbors, maybe some petty theft that's a law and order issue. The regular police, the criminal justice system, they handle that.
Right, standard policing.
Exactly. But massive communal riots, widespread disruption, something that really threatens the whole community's functioning, that's a threat to public order. The court is saying this power, detaining someone before a crime is proven, should only be for that severe latter case.
But the article points out that many state laws, like CAPA for instance, they don't really stick to that line, do they?
No, they often don't. Their definitions can be so broad they scoop up, almost, as the article puts it, the entire Milky Way of minor stuff. It makes it tempting for authorities to use detention as a shortcut instead of proper investigation and prosecution.
A shortcut. And this power, it has history, doesn't it?
Oh, deep colonial roots. Goes right back to the British Bengal regulations of 1818. Independent India kept this relic, even though there were some fierce debates in the Constituent Assembly. Critics warned back then we were building police-state powers right into the Constitution.
And the courts, early on, sort of cemented this conflict. The A.K. Gopalan case in 1950 seems critical here. It apparently isolated Article 22, creating what the source calls an authoritarian penal colony.
That's the crux of it. Gopalan argued his detention violated due process, freedom of speech, but the court said, nope. Detention under Article 22 can only be checked against the very specific procedures within Article 22 itself. It basically shut the door to broader constitutional challenges based on fairness or fundamental rights.
But wait, how did that hold up after the big Maneka Gandhi ruling in '78? That case famously said all state actions have to be fair, just, and reasonable. How could they ignore that for preventive detention? Seems like a huge gap.
It wasn't ignorance, it was, well, a conscious resistance. You see it in the 1982 case, A.K. Roy. The court explicitly fell back on that older pre-Maneka logic. It stated that preventive detention laws couldn't be challenged for violating the Golden Triangle.
Let's just pause on that term. The Golden Triangle, we're talking Articles 14, 19, and 21, right? Equality, freedoms, and life and liberty. The absolute core.
Exactly. The very heart of fundamental rights. The court basically said, you detainees, you don't get full access to that heart. So what does this boil down to? It's eerily like that sci-fi dilemma in Steven Spielberg's Minority Report.
The pre-crime concept.
Precisely. The film warns about arresting people based on probability, denying them due process because someone thinks they'll commit a crime. Our system, relying on the subjective satisfaction of officials, well, it functions a bit like those precogs in the movie. Decisions based on perceived risk, not proven fact.
That's a chilling comparison. It really underscores the danger, doesn't it? Relying on subjective feelings with limited review, it risks the very things Minority Report warned about. The consensus seems to be those old rulings need a serious rethink. To lock this power down only for truly grave threats, like terrorism.
Absolutely urgent.
Okay, let's shift gears now from dense constitutional law to the world of global trade and diplomacy. We've had high-level meetings recently, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer visiting Mumbai. It seems the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, signed back in July 2025, is really the new foundation for the India-UK relationship.
It is. It's a major strategic anchor. CETA sets a pretty ambitious goal-doubling bilateral trade by 2030. That's huge. It provides some economic stability for both in what's, frankly, a pretty fragmented global trade environment.
And the benefits are quite specific, aren't they? What does India get out of it straight away?
Well, Indian exports get a boost. Think textiles, key farm goods, pharmaceuticals. They'll face lower tariffs going into the UK. And on the flip side, the UK gets reduced duties on some of its big hitters, like Scotch whiskey and cars.
It's not just about shipping goods back and forth, though, is it? There's a focus on people, on talent. The Double Contributions Convention, the DCC, that sounds important.
It really is. It makes it easier for skilled Indian professionals to work in the UK. Essentially, it means their UK employers don't have to pay Social Security contributions in both countries for up to 3 years. That saves companies money, making it more attractive to bring Indian talent over.
Right, removing a barrier.
Exactly. And that talent flow is vital, especially since the UK is already a pretty significant investor here, number 6, actually, accounting for nearly 5% of India's FDI. But, the partnership goes way beyond just pounds and rupees.
We see that with things like the Vision 2035 roadmap and this defense industrial roadmap. It's not just buying and selling. It's about jointly developing and even co-producing advanced defense tech.
And what's really interesting, I think, is how they're explicitly linking economics and security now. They launched this Technology Security Initiative, the TSI, in 2024. It mandates collaboration between the national security advisors on really sensitive stuff, AI, quantum computing, semiconductors.
So weaving together economic interests and national security concerns.
Precisely. It positions them both as key players in building, trusted, secure technology supply chains. It's about resilience.
So looking at the bigger picture, this isn't just a standard trade deal. It's framing India and the UK as co-architects of a more stable, open, tech-driven global order. Working together on digital innovation, green finance. It's about shaping the future, not just reacting to it.
That seems to be the ambition, yes.
Okay, now let's turn our focus inward to a silent crisis happening in our own natural environments. The threat from stealth invader species. Scientists are sounding the alarm because these non-native plants and animals, often brought in accidentally or, for gardens, are just overwhelming local ecosystems.
The scale is staggering, really. Globally, there are something like 37,000 established alien species, and around 200 new ones establish themselves every single year. India itself is estimated to be dealing with about 139 highly invasive alien species right now.
We need some concrete examples, I think, to really grasp the impact. How are these invaders actually harming things?
Okay, take Lantana camara. Many people know it. It's got those colorful flowers, introduced as an ornamental shrub. But now, it's actively hindering elephant conservation.
How so?
It grows incredibly thick, making it hard for elephants and other large animals to even move through their habitats. Plus, they can't eat it, so it pushes them out, closer to villages and farms, which, inevitably leads to more human-animal conflict.
Wow. Okay, and what about Prosopis juliflora? That's the one called Gondobawar, the mad tree.
Ah, yes. A classic case of good intentions gone wrong. It was brought in, I think, in the 60s from South America, specifically to combat salty land in Gujarat's Bonny grassland. But the cure turned out worse than the disease.
Because?
Because it's incredibly thirsty. It just guzzles water. It now covers maybe 50, even 60% of the Bonny area, sucking up surface water. And the irony, it's actually made the saltwater intrusion worse in many places. It's completely disrupted the local wildlife and the traditional ways of life for pastoralists and farmers who depended on that grassland.
Devastating. And it's not just on land, is it? The problem's in our water bodies, too.
Absolutely. We have around 626 alien aquatic species identified. Many came in through the aquarium trade, people releasing unwanted pets. Think about the water hyacinth, Pontidaria crassipes. It's everywhere. It chokes rivers and lakes, kills off native plants, ruins habitats for migratory birds. It's listed globally as one of the 10 worst invasives. And it's now a major threat to over 1,000 species of India's threatened freshwater fish.
1,000 species?
Yeah.
That's huge. But the article mentions a big problem for scientists trying to fight this: lack of data.
That's a major hurdle. For many of these invasives in India, like maybe some famous global examples, we just don't have the detailed history. Where exactly did they come from? When? Where are they now? What specifically are they doing to the local ecology or economy? Especially for freshwater invasions, the science here is still, as they say, in its infancy.
Which creates this sort of chicken and egg problem for conservationists, right? Do you wait until you've documented every single impact, which could take years, or do you act now based on what you do know?
You can't really afford to wait. The consensus is you have to do both things at once. Prepare conservation plans now, drawing on what we know from other countries where these species have caused havoc, learn from their ecological and economic impacts. But at the same time, we desperately need to ramp up our own impact studies here in India, develop standard ways to measure the damage, and get more people involved. Citizen science, for example, could be huge for just mapping where these things are.
Right, parallel tracks, documenting and acting
It's
simultaneously.
exactly, it's the only way forward, really.
So we've talked about ecosystems under threat from invasives. Now let's look at the regulatory ecosystem meant to protect human workers, which seems to be getting systematically dismantled, often with truly tragic results.
The scale of the workplace safety crisis is it's horrifying. These recent accidents we've all read about, the chemical reactor burst in Telangana, the fireworks explosion in Sivakasi, the thermal plant collapse in Ennore, they're not isolated incidents. They point to a massive systemic failure.
And the statistics are stark. 1 in 4 fatal workplace accidents globally happens in India. That's staggering and likely an underestimate.
Definitely an underestimate, especially when you consider contract workers whose injuries or deaths often go unreported. And when you dig into the details of these accidents, like the Telangana reactor, it wasn't just bad luck.
No, the report said it was operating at double the safe temperature,
Right.
with no alarms, no safety officer.
Exactly, and unregistered workers too. It's negligence, pure and simple. The International Labor Organization, the ILO, confirms this pattern. Accidents rarely just happen. They happen because management cuts corners to boost profits. We hear human error used as an excuse all the time.
Right, blaming the worker.
But that totally ignores the real causes. People forced to work dangerously long hours under intense pressure, often on low wages that make them take double shifts just to survive. That fundamentally compromises safety.
We do have laws, though. The Factories Act of 1948 strengthened after Bhopal. But the compensation system seems flawed. The Workmen's Compensation Act from 1923 apparently leads to really small payouts.
Very small payouts. And increasingly what happens is companies or the government offer ex gratia payments, sort of goodwill gestures, instead of proper legal compensation. The source argues this effectively turns compensation into charity.
And lets the employer off the hook.
That's the core ethical issue. If the cost of negligence is covered by taxpayers through these ex gratia payments, or just seen as corporate generosity, then the employer avoids real financial and, more importantly, criminal accountability for creating unsafe conditions.
And this isn't new, is it? The article traces this weakening of protections back in the 90s, driven by this push for ease of doing business, like Maharashtra allowing companies to self-certify safety compliance back in 2015.
Right, essentially telling companies, grade your own homework. It removes that crucial element of independent inspection and enforcement, which, let's be honest, is often the only real protection workers have.
And the new central law, the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code, the OSHWC Code from 2020, seems to formalize this shift, moving safety from a right to, executive discretion?
Pretty much. It shifts the power away from clear statutory rights towards government officials having more leeway. Protection becomes less certain, more dependent on interpretation or goodwill. And then you add things like states permanently increasing working hours. Karnataka did it in 2023. Longer hours, less rest. It's a direct hit on safety.
So the conclusion seems pretty clear.
It is, until safety is treated unequivocally as a fundamental right, until mandatory, unannounced inspections are robustly enforced, and until employers face serious criminal liability for preventable deaths, workers' lives remain tragically disposable.
Okay, our final piece today looks at how a very localized dispute spiraled very quickly into a national constitutional debate. This is the I Love Muhammad slogan controversy. It kicked off September 4th in Kanpur, didn't it? A light board with the slogan during Prophet's birthday celebrations led to claims it violated procession rules.
Yes, it started small, but it escalated rapidly, primarily due to the nature of the official response. You had protests in Bareilly against alleged police heavy-handedness, followed by the use of bulldozers against private properties there. Then, in places like Unnao and Maharashganj, permissions for gatherings were denied, leading to clashes, leading to mass arrests.
So the state's reaction really amplified it, spread it beyond Kanpur.
Absolutely. The slogan itself then transformed. It became a symbol used widely on social media and in protests across different states as a way to push back against what many saw as excessive state force, particularly in Uttar Pradesh but also elsewhere. We're talking over 1,300 people booked across multiple states for displaying or supporting the slogan.
Which inevitably brings it into the constitutional arena.
Right. Groups like Jamaat Islami Hind immediately challenged the criminalization. They argued it was ultra-vires, basically, beyond the state's legal powers because it violated fundamental rights. Specifically, Article 19, freedom of expression, Article 21, life and liberty, and Article 25, freedom of religion. The fact that political leaders trying to visit the areas were detained only raised the stakes of this constitutional fight.
It's a stark example, really, of how quickly something seemingly small a religious slogan on a light board, can ignite a major national confrontation about the limits of state power versus fundamental rights.
A real flashpoint, #tag outro. Looking back across these 5 pieces, we've gone from the state's power to detain without trial, to police actions and disputes, to invasive species-wrecking ecosystems, to deadly negligence in factories. There's a common thread, isn't there? This constant tension between state power or corporate interest and individual rights or safety. So the question I leave you, the listener, with is this. How do we, as a society, pursue security, pursue economic growth, without letting institutional power, whether it's the legal framework itself, or the lack of enforcement, or direct state action, constantly chip away at those fundamental constitutional promises, the promise of safety, the promise of liberty for every single citizen? Finding that balance, that's really the ongoing test for any democracy, isn't it?
A crucial question indeed. Thank you for listening. If you want to provide suggestions, please contact on the Twitter handle given in the episode description. As always, we are eager to hear what our listeners want to be informed about. We wish you a great day.